welcome to episode 5 of the American Tributaries podcast, where, to break out of the bubbles we've all been living in these last few years, we are using modern technology to explore the various currents of people in our great country. I'm your host, Michael Whidden. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by David Goldsmith. David I've known since 2006 when I started taking my car to his auto repair shop, Urban Classics, which he started back in 1990 and is currently located in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn. David, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, that's great. And I kind of feel like I can learn a lot from you because not only is auto maintenance of any sort beyond my capacity, but you've also hosted a radio show
Yeah,
for
well,
like a number of years.
co-hosted.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, I was, our show was called the AutoLab Radio. We were on live New York radio for almost 36 years. I only did 32 years though, so I was one of the beginners. I'm still
Wow.
still learning.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it was really fun to do. COVID kind of took us out of the picture. We lost funding and stuff like that, but it's been always been a great experience.
That's great. And when did you find, was that more, were you talking to like people and getting into really technical parts of like auto repair and maintenance, or was it kind of just what kind of,
Well,
what was the tone of it?
yeah, we were sponsored by, it was called the Consortium for Automotive Education. I've been involved in automotive education for a long time, and I used to teach up at Bronx Community College and the City University in the automotive department, and we were really into automotive education. So we would interview interesting people, automotive journalists and people that were involved in kind of leading edge automotive technology. But we would also, and what was fun was we would, take questions from, live questions from people in New York. I got a 1999 Buick and I brought it to three different places and they changed this and changed that. And what do you think's my next move? And, you can't fix a car over the airwaves, but you can hear the story. You can make suggestions. A lot of it was, giving people kind of a direction to go in. And some of us, there were a bunch of, it wasn't just me on the show. There were like um, 10 different auto repair shop owners around the city that we were involved with the consortium. So you say, hey, you want to bring it down? Are you in Brooklyn? You can come by and we'll take a look for you. So it was kind of good for business, but it was more really, it was considered a public service, and all of us really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So how did you get started? And then I gotta say, like, I also, if I saw correctly on like LinkedIn, like you went to school out in Chicago and were like involved with like Latin American
Yeah.
studies, or is
Yeah.
that another, was that
Yeah.
a different
Yeah.
David Goldsmith?
No, no, that's the same one. A lot of people don't put the two together. So I've when I was, out of high school, I didn't know. I always kind of liked working with my hands, and I was working on cars. I had a friend, Sam, my best friend. He lived in Bayside, Queens. I lived in Manhattan, so I didn't have a driveway. He did, and we used to fix his father's car. And even much younger than that, I had another friend who had a driveway, and we always used to tinker around. And I went to Stuyvesant High School, science and math high school.
Hmm.
Um, but I love shop class and stuff like that. And when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I'd just do something other than college. But I got a scholarship to the University of Chicago.
Oh wow.
They paid my the whole way. So I said, well, I don't have anything better to do. My father said, listen, either you go to school out there on their dime or you're going to start paying me rent. So I decided to go out to Chicago.
That's quite a bargain.
Yeah. And I it was a great experience, and I got into I had a lot of friends in high school that spoke Spanish, and I kind of dabbled with Spanish. And um I went to Chicago and started Latin American literature and things like that, and ended up doing a 6-week program down in Mexico City, and I fell in love with Mexico. Um, and but University of Chicago, I did well in, but then after 2 years, they said, now you have to start paying. I said, what did I do? They said, no, you did fine, but now you have to pay. I said, and back then it was the most expensive school in the country. It was a whole $3,200 a year. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's we just looked at a USC during the past winter break, and it's $82,000 all in.
Yeah.
I
Youch.
don't think that I think that's kind of exceeded inflation a little bit.
Yeah, that's a bit much, but it's way up there. And back then it was a lot of money, and as much as, it was, the school was okay, but they were a little bit into this elitist education, which I was not that into. And I decided to take off, and I moved to Madison, Wisconsin with a friend, and I just worked up there. I worked in a die-cast plant of all things. But then I really was yearning for Latin American stuff, and I decided to, I don't know how old I was. Maybe I was 20 years old. I said, it'd be great to live in another country. I was young and stupid. I said, "Oh, Mexico! I could go to Mexico. I had lived in Mexico for 6 weeks. I'll go to Mexico City." So I sold all my stuff, and moved to Mexico City. And when I got there, I went, "I guess I got to find a place to stay, huh?" Anyway, long story short, I somehow talked my way into the La Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico, which is UNAM. That's the big university in Mexico City where the Olympics were. And somehow, based on my attendance at University of Chicago, and I had this very famous professor at Chicago, this guy named Friedrich Katz. And when they heard his name, and he was big in Mexico, they said, "Oh, a student of Friedrich Katz." So they took me. So I studied Latin American studies there. I was there for about a year and a half. That was in the mid '70s. I came back. I started working again, and I went back to Wisconsin, then came to the city, and then when my folks were like, "You really should finish your degree," and I went to City College. And while I was at City College, this is a long story. While I was at City College, I needed work. And a friend of mine had an auto repair shop on 110th Street and Central Park West. It's no longer there. It's a condominium
Yeah, I was
complex.
gonna say, my God, that would be some really valuable real estate.
Oh my gosh, it was, and therefore the car wash and the auto repair shop is no more. But this guy, fellow by the name of Guy Stridham, who was a South African mechanic, had this shop there, and I was friends with him. He said, come help me out." And I worked my way through City College that way. And as much as I liked academia, and I was, I was very handy at it. I was good at it. I really enjoyed fixing things. I enjoyed the challenge of the thing comes in and it doesn't work, and when I'm done, it does. And the process involved. I really always enjoyed the diagnostic stuff and figuring, problem solving and seeing tangible results. And so that's real. And so after uh, I got my degree at City College in Latin American Studies, and City College, by the way, was an awesome institution, equal to University of Chicago in my humble view. I mean, I had Nobel Prize laureates teaching me at City College, so it was all good. But I decided I really enjoyed the hands-on stuff, and so I kept at it, and a lot of it I was self-taught, Michael. But then I realized, and I was good at learning through textbooks and things like that. But and also what they call La Universidad de la Vida, the University of Life. That's called making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I got fairly good at it, but then I decided to go to school for it, and I went through the City University automotive program. At that point, it was at City Tech, which is right there now called the New York City College of Technology, and got some great education there, and became master certified ASE, and got all kinds of licenses and training, um, and then some fool notion got me into thinking that I should own an auto repair shop. I don't know what.
How
You
long
know,
had
they, you know,
had you been working in like a shop for a while? I mean, I know you've been working on the side while you're going to school. Had you been working full time in a shop for a while and then it hit you, or was it just as you got your degree and
well,
looking at
no,
the
I
future?
was working in shops. I was working for my friend Guy, who I had this big falling out with. He just, you know, I worked in shops. They were independents. And back then, this is we're talking about the 70s. These dark holes. Those greasy pits, and there was a lot of great work going on in those places. But I always, I didn't work under great working conditions. I tried to, I tried to get a job in the dealership, and I don't know if I should name the dealership. Big major dealership in Manhattan, and the tool guy recommended. He said, "Hey, this kid Goldsmith's pretty smart. You should take him on." So he recommended me to the foreman of this huge dealership in Manhattan, and they interviewed me, and the guy hired me on the spot. And this guy comes walking through, and he's like points to the guy and to me, and says, "Who's that guy?" And he says, "Oh, I just hired him. Uh, Dave Goldsmith. He's going to be a tech here." Guy goes, "Goldsmith?" And this is the 70s. He says, "You Jewish?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Jewish." He says, the guy came back later on. He says, "Look, you're going to have to take a lie detector test." I said, "A lie detector test?" Well, it was standard operating procedure. And anyway, I ended up not getting the job. And the guy told me, the foreman told me, he says, the guy thought, he says, some Jewish guy wants to be an auto mechanic. He says, he must be a union organizer.
Oh my
There went my career at the dealership. So,
well,
so he must
so
be a union organizer. So,
but it is an
um,
interesting like evolution. I mean, like, I guess for you, I mean, like you went to one of the elite city high schools. You went to one
yeah.
of the the best universities in in the country for a while. Like, did you ever kind of have second thoughts, like should I be doing this? Because like the trajectory, is usually more like, okay, you got to build on that, you got to build on that. Now,
Yeah.
and you were going in, I mean, probably a different direction than a lot of your
Yeah.
peers. Is that correct? And like, how did that feel if that's the case? And
Yeah. There was a piece of me that missed, I mean, there was a lot of stuff, my interest in Latin America, um, and not to get into politics, but there was
mhm.
a lot of, the social justice stuff,
Yeah,
what was
yeah,
going
yeah.
on in Latin America at that time,
Hmm.
the all the dictatorships,
Hmm.
Pinochet and Uruguay and Chile and
Hmm.
Guatemala. These were all terrible. Argentina and Brazil, and I met all these people in Mexico City that were exiles, and unbelievable stories that people went through, and I always felt like and down in Mexico City, all the students there also, where there was like a lot of like you should, it's a privilege to go to school, and you shouldn't waste it. You're a product. You're at a school where you know all the taxpayer dollars, everything. There was this kind of like social consciousness that you should. It's not just for yourself. It's for the betterment of the world. And I thought, you know, I mean, good auto repair is a service. We
Hmm.
talked about a community
Yeah.
service, but there was a piece of me that always kind of pined for like, well, what am I doing to make really a big difference in the world? And that's when I got very much involved. When my daughter was born, this was later on. Um, I got very much involved, and I don't know if you know, I did a lot of work in public education, so and got heavily involved with that. Um, it was actually like a second job. I mean, it was huge. We became the president of what, in the beginning it was, PTAs and school leadership teams, but later on uh, became district wide uh, parent activism, and a lot of what I learned, a lot of the skills that I learned in college, how to write, how to speak, how to uh, you know uh, communicate effectively, um, helped me a lot in the schoolwork, and and we did some pretty big things. We worked on some big stuff in District 13 in Brooklyn, and worked with a lot of great parents and a lot of great educators, and you know uh, challenged the system to do right by children. And it was my auto repair business that allowed me to do that work, with the skills that I learned in college. But if I, and I also one of the things that, because I was doing this work in the schools, I needed to know, like my shop, I needed a lot of work in terms of management. So I actually started taking automotive shop management courses. I still do. I'm involved with all kinds of groups. In fact, today I'll meet with my group of shop owners from around the country that we meet every week, about six of us, and we, talk shop, so to speak. But um, but I learned shop management so that I could, run the shop, and the shop had to be successful, and it enabled me to not only serve the community in terms of getting their cars fixed, but a really very important work to me that I hold very dear to my heart was the work that we did in public education. And it's so funny how, auto repair helped me to do that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we ended up, I with a few other people, more than a few other people, we organized a citywide organization that of all the community education councils of New York City. And, we worked on the chancellor level and the mayor's office and big stuff. And I, the system is still broken, kind of, but we affected some change that I'm very proud of. And so it's kind of, you know an eclectic world I kind of created, different, um, and I actually appreciate the fact that you know um, I can move in different worlds, and move genuinely and comfortably um, with big time politicians and you know big bureaucrats and stuff like that, and the guy who delivers parts to my shop, and everybody has a role in this world. I love people, um, and both the work with the automobiles and in the schools helped me to kind of get to know people. And as you're on your quest there, learning about people. It always just it's amazing. Human beings are amazing.
Yeah.
And
And it seems like in some respects, I mean, really, it's like you're not defined by by your vocation, so to speak. Like yeah, I guess you're a good person trying to do right by the people around you, and whether that is in the school sphere or I'm sure as a neighbor or in your with your shop, you're trying to make a difference. And one of the things I noticed with a client, like I work in like wine wholesale and
mhm.
distribution, and what I sensed during the pandemic is that there were some wine shops that kind of became almost like kind of and I've seen this even before the pandemic, but like they kind of become like the corner bar. They kind of become like Cheers, and I think that to me it's what people are really. I think people are looking for are just places where like they're looking for like almost like community or places where they can kind of
Oh,
trust. And like my
absolutely.
sense, like for you, and like when I, first, when we first got a car in 2006, and I was like, I need to take this someplace. Um, I don't know how I got directed to you, And I know, and it definitely was kind of interesting that I saw that you had a radio show at that time because there was a picture of you with like the headphones and the
Yeah,
microphone. So I was like, oh,
yeah,
well, this guy must be
yeah,
good. But like there was just a feeling of trust that is like you couldn't necessarily articulate why. I couldn't necessarily articulate why I felt that way, but I do feel like when I drop my car off, even though I'm only interacting with your guys for a couple minutes, it's like I feel like I'm like a little part of that kind of community. And
yeah,
even though you moved
yeah,
farther away from
yeah,
where I live now, to me it's invaluable to have that. And if it means that I've got to add an extra 25-30 minutes to get in my car to you, I'd do that in a heartbeat because there's an element of trust. And
yeah,
how have you like done that? Because I know I've read how you believe in customer service, but there's one thing to say it and there's another thing of like how do you actually do that? So how is it that you've managed a place for so long where you can kind of have such good people
yeah.
working for you and develop that trust with the end customers?
Yeah. Well, it's really, and I learned a lot about this in management courses that I took, and um, you have to build a culture in your shop, and the culture that and I've mentioned it before already. It's caring. It's the care factor. So when I interview somebody, right now we have like 19 employees. Whoa. Uh, but when I interview people, it's like it's as important, if not more important, of what they know how to do. But do they care about people? Like, I mean, we're all human, and I tell you, I mean, when we make mistakes, we do. It happens.
Yep.
Um, and but our mantra is kind of like we take ownership of it. Some of our best customers have been from when we screwed up, and how we handled it. um, because we're not here to screw up, we're here to help people. And
That's your
so
opportunity to distinguish yourself.
yeah, so and taking ownership of it. And it's just and unfortunately, in our business, a lot of the trades, I think, suffer from this, whether it's well deserved or not. That's up for debate, because I think like shops, oh, you can't trust a mechanic. Um, I think there are shops out there that where people are dishonest, but I think there's also a lot of, and it's not an excuse. Um, it's lack of knowledge, it's incompetency. Um, Vehicles today are outrageously complex. And so there's a lot of, I took it to three people, and you hear the stories, and you know, some of the mistakes that are made on cars. I hear, I took it to this guy and he changed that, and I took it to that guy and he changed this, and I took it to this guy and he changed that, and the car's still not fixed. And you hear the story. Maybe it was the radio that got me to. Well, I would just hear it all the time in my shop also, but it's like, I know where this is going, and I know why the guy changed that part, and I know why the guy changed that part. People were making assumptions, and I'm talking to the customer. I'm going, you were part of this.
Mm-hmm.
You were describing something that, a lot of it's communication and breaking down. My car doesn't start, so I need a starter, and they
Mm-hmm.
ask for a starter and they get a starter. And what do you know? The guy never needed a starter, because every time he turned the key, nobody asked him the question, well, what happens when you turn the key? And the
Mm-hmm.
guy goes, "Zh, zh, 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 zh." Well, you don't need a starter. That's the last thing you need. But
Yeah.
a lot of it's communication. So I think I think, in our shop, it's just like the truth will set you free, and you care about people, and you take ownership, and we work constantly on our product.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we meet, we have weekly front office meetings and weekly whole staff meetings, but then we'll also have, sometimes, 2, 3, what we call huddles in the middle of the week. We bring everybody together. Something's happened. What happened here? What could we do? Like, how do we identify the problem? How can we avoid things? just happen. It's
Mm-hmm.
and it's like we're always working on ourselves and to do better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that I've learned the hard way that in the beginning when I was taking the management courses, I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to learn how to run the perfect shop. And then I found out after, 10, 15 years of doing this training, it's like, oh, this is a never ending process, isn't it?
Kind of applies to life too. Like I thought by the
Yeah,
time I turned 50, like I would be wise and I could handle everything. But I'm like, you know
right.
what? There just seems to be new stuff that keeps coming
Yeah,
up.
yeah. An old time mechanic, friend of mine who's no longer with us, um, George Stern. I used to be down when I was down on Old Fulton Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
guy who owned the place before me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I was renting from somebody he sold it to, and George would come down, old timer. He'd say, "Hey, Dave, how you doing? How you doing here?" George, I got problems. George, I got problems. He goes, "Well, that's good." I go, "George, why is that good? I got problems." He says, "Because the day you don't have problems, it probably means that you're dead."
That's true.
My, I said, I thought about it for a moment. I said, "Gee, George, I've been enlightened."
Mhm. Yeah, it is true.
So, yeah, I mean the trust factor. I think it comes from we effectively message to our customers not just by what we say but what we do. That builds trust. And it's just there's nothing like running a shop and doing everything you can to take good care of people and sleeping good at night because of that.
Yeah.
Not and so I have people, and I've been blessed to work with I got a staff of some really great people that care,
Hmm.
and I appreciate them so much because it's kind of like um, they carry my values that are very important to me forward
Hmm.
with what we do. So, and again, that doesn't mean that things don't go wrong, because they do.
Yeah.
Every oh my god. And lately, with the the last couple of years, um because we the overwhelming demand, the number of vehicles and the challenges, just the extra challenges, just to get a simple, like an oil filter for a car. It's like it used to show up in 20 minutes. Now it's well, we got to send it. We've got one in New Rochelle, and we're going to send it to the Bronx. Then we're going to send it to Woodside, Queens. When Woodside, it'll go to Williamsburg, and Williamsburg, it'll come to you.
Wow.
And when will that be? Well, you know
Wow. Are those certain? Are the supply problems smoothing out, or are you still seeing
No,
like
it's still pretty bad. I
really?
what has improved dramatically, at least in terms of, at least there was a period of time where not only did our suppliers not have the product to send to us, but they didn't even have drivers. You know, we had this one outfit that I do like 40, 50,000 dollars a month of business with, and they're used to having something like 40 drivers in Brooklyn. At one point during the pandemic, I think they had two. It's like, and so the cars pile up. Everybody's waiting for parts. We've had I mean, I needed a battery for a BMW. The guy couldn't drive his car. It was like a 2017 BMW. You need a battery. It has to be a BMW battery. You can't put anything but a BMW battery in that car. We searching the whole United States of America for this battery. Couldn't find it. Finally, it showed up on some search I did in a BMW dealership up in Spring Valley, New York. And they agreed to sell it to me. Sometimes you find it and they won't sell it to you because it's no, 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 no. We're going to save it for our customer. I had to drive all the way to Spring Valley, New York to go get this battery. But it was like 6 hours of driving to get this battery, and there was a huge rate of profit on that battery. I think the battery bought it for like $109 and it listed for 117. It didn't pay the gas tolls, or
Yeah.
but it's what we're dealing with. So the
Right.
supply lines are still broken, and people, as you know, I mean, walking into wine stores. I mean, maybe they're a little less stressed out when they're in the tasting room at the wine store, but people are stressed out.
Yeah.
They're people are tired of things not going as planned.
Yeah. I mean,
And
everything you couldn't question. You had to. Everything was up for grabs. Not you couldn't
yeah,
rely on anything. And I think hopefully, I mean, it feels like things are slowly kind of
yeah,
settling back into either you can rely on things, or if you can't, you still
yeah,
can kind of roll with the punches, which is probably not a bad thing for us to kind of all learn how to roll with the punches a little
yeah,
bit more.
yeah, yeah. I
So
mean, absolutely. I think. Oh, listen, you, I think the word gratitude. You know, I know I have so much to be grateful for. And like if something doesn't go right, but really in this whole scheme of things, especially in the worst part of the pandemic, it's like, what the hell am I complaining about? I still have a job, I still
yeah,
have, I have a home. I have, you know, I'm in a business that there's demand. I would always say to myself, God, thank God I'm not in the restaurant business.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but rolling with the punches. I mean, get used to it, everybody, and
yeah.
it's a good lesson to learn,
Hmm.
because even when whole thing passes, hopefully people kind of remember a little bit about like what's really important,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to things leveling out, but I think hopefully, like I say, people will take some lessons away from this horrible experience,
Yeah.
and
And how we couldn't. I
and
hope.
uh, you know live our lives a little bit in a more sane way.
Yeah.
I'll say.
So the one thing that I've always done in the wine world, or I think about, is like, so if I had a friend who was in a different state, and I would just say, and they would ask me like, hey, do you know a good wine shop? And I don't know any. Like, I would try to think like, what would I tell them to look for to identify a place where you can trust them. And it would be easy to say like, go to a place that has these wines on the shelf, but you never know like why those wines are on the shelf.
Right.
I usually think more about how do you like evaluate their trust and like I guess their passion for their work.
Mm,
But I guess like for you, like, so if say somebody isn't in the New York area and they can't go to urban classics, like what would you advise somebody who is in a different area and they're looking for their auto repair shop? Like
yeah.
what would you be looking for if you were like in Minnesota and like I need my thing
Yeah.
fixed? Then how do I
Yeah.
know whether I can trust this place or not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely. Listen, I mean, I think there is something to be said for physical appearance. Um, you know, a clean, organized shop, um, and an office that is sane. You know, it's not that you can't do some quality repairs in a place there where like there's just piles of junk everywhere. The old style shops, poorly lit, and just dead cars everywhere, and but in today's world, you can't. It's probably not a great idea to go into a shop that's just like looks like a bomb hit it. It's got to be kind of well organized, and of course, and then it's the human interaction. It's it's you can tell whether somebody cares about you and your problem or not. If you get this, you know, and I've called other shops for one reason or another, and it's like I'm going like, how do they answer the phone? Or
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
like, my
Yeah.
God, it's like
Yeah.
they're doing you some kind of a big favor to, it's just so that you got to get that sense of caring. The whole review thing, Michael. I don't
Hmm.
know
Or like
what you
Yelp and
think of
stuff like
it.
that.
Yeah, I mean that's
I don't pay much credence to those because I
yeah,
kind of feel like more people like are not going like if I have a good experience, like I honestly I don't take the time to like write something in. I think if you're angry, it's like
yeah,
you're I think it's going to be a skewed perspective when you look at
yeah,
them.
yeah,
So to me, it's like I don't. I think maybe I might look at the number of reviews. Like, does a
yeah,
good people go to this place? But
right,
I don't like. To me, I don't. It's it's a weird thing because like you talk to people and like you have people who worry about getting one bad complaint about from somebody, and to
right,
me, I think
right,
like you're letting the trolls kind of like
right,
dominate.
right,
But I
right,
get that maybe it's a reference point. But to me, I would much rather go by with what you're saying, which is like, does it look clean? And like when clean enough and organized enough, and when you call them, do they treat you, respectfully and
yeah,
like they care? And I don't know if it needs to be more than that, but I think to me those would be the two things. Because if the person who answers the phone is rude or surly or whatever, even if she's having a bad day, that means that she doesn't have the support in her
right,
work in her office place to make
right,
them feel less stressed out,
yeah,
so that at
yeah,
least they can kind of like hide it. So
yeah,
I I,
yeah.
I don't know if there's more to it than that, but I think those are two probably far better gauges than somebody who's upset going on Yelp.
Yeah, it's funny. Um, I've when you really care about what happens, and if things go wrong, like yesterday, I was dealing with something that went wrong in our process. I mean, I think there was problem. The customer had a certain kind of attitude also that was not helpful, or maybe they were looking for a fight or something. But um, uh, it's I take it really, like, it really hurts, like if we failed some. I mean, really, like, I feel it inside, so, and I have to take, sometimes you have to take a little bit of the emotion out of it, but it's, the emotion's important. But then like, okay, but the real challenge is here, like, what, instead of getting all defensive, like, what went wrong here, what really happened. It's so important. And when you talk about the reviews, is I had an incident, and I had a tech who I later had a fire, and he did some really bad things. And somebody wrote this scathing, like, one of these reviews that went
Wow.
on for like pages. It was like, oh my God. And the irony of it, and he said, I'm going to destroy you on the internet. And Yelp, and you hit every what do you call it, site,
Hmm.
Yelp and Google and
Hmm.
wherever else he could. um, and So I went, and I, first of all, I investigated, like, what actually happened, what was true, and what had to be fixed in our process, but also, you know, where this guy maybe went a little bit overboard. Anyway, I answered him, and I mean, his thing was this long, so my answer was maybe this long. It had to be. It was very detailed. Um, anyway, and he was like, so, like, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna, I don't know what. He's somehow destroy us. And I started getting, like, this one guy comes in like the week later, and he says, and a new customer, and how'd you read about us? Well, I actually saw a Google review, and he says it was actually that really bad review. That's why I'm here. I go, I don't get that. Wait a minute. It's because of that guy that hated me, that where we did this, and this tech drove his car unauthorized, and he picked up his girlfriend. Oh my God, you came here for that? And he goes, yeah, well, you answered him, and it just seemed like you really cared about what happened, and you took responsibility for what. So I was really impressed with that, and I'm telling all my friends about you. So,
Wow.
and then the ironic thing is that a couple months later, that same guy who was hell bent to destroy us, he brought his car back. And everybody said, "Why are you working on his car?" I said, "Well, he needs help. We'll fix his car." And he was very decent, and we just
Mhm.
did it. But the whole review thing, you're right. It's some people
Yeah,
have a lot of time on their hands,
yeah.
and
Well, I think there's also a sense of like I think there's a sense of powerlessness that people have. Maybe I don't know if as society gets bigger or technology, like in different technology
yeah,
gets more involved, and I think that there's just like if nothing else, I'm just going to get a piece of flesh out of this, or at least I
yeah,
get to kind of express myself,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's unfortunate, but I guess like to me, like what I try to teach our kids is like you do the right thing not to get the right thing back. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
exactly.
If
There
you
you
do
go.
it conditioned on somebody else doing right by you, then it's a transaction and it's
That's
not
right.
actually like a value. So
It shouldn't be transactional.
right, you
You're
do the right thing
absolutely
because
right
it's
about
right.
that.
So you're nice because you're thoughtful or you're forgiving or you're apologetic because
Yeah,
that's the way you
because
feel, not because you
that's
want them to
it,
be quiet or to.
exactly,
So
exactly. So, you
yeah.
know, anyway, I think that it makes us a little bit unusual.
Hmm.
People aren't used to it in an auto repair shop. Um, but I think if you're always in that process of you know trying to do better,
Hmm.
and if you've got your whole team engaged in that, it's
Hmm.
just gonna be known.
Yeah.
It'll be understood by people who come.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to run it. I think any business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So, I should ask, so like, what kind of car do you drive at home,
I have
if I may
uh,
ask?
yeah, I drive an '05
Mm-hmm.
Audi
Mm-hmm.
A4 Quattro stick shift. Um, I bought it from a customer who never drove it, and he had it garage kept, and we took care of it. It's practically its whole life. And at one point, he's going, "Geez, I'm spending like $500 a month on a garage space. I don't really drive it. You know anybody who like it?" And I like Volkswagens and Audis. I had a Passat four motion station wagon, one of my favorites. We had a little Beetle, like a new Beetle. Um, those are the cars I drive. Back in the day, I was when I first met my wife, I loved it. It was actually a four door '71 Olds Cutlass um, with that big engine, 455 engine in it, and it had a posi rear. It was like a very fast sleeper car. But generally speaking, I like the European field cars, Volkswagen and Audi in particular. Um, they're more expensive to fix. They break a little bit more than the Toyotas and the Lexuses and the Hondas and the Acuras. But I just enjoy driving it, and it's a small. I mean, I'm not into you know really into big supercars or classic cars. I'm called the business is called Urban Classics, right?
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of people say, "Why is it Urban Classics?" Well, when I first started in the business, when I had my big business plan, a smart guy that I was going to say, "Hey, there's nobody." And I used to fix like older cars for people. They'd bring me a '50 Chevy this or a 1940 DeSoto, these old cars. And I used to fix them, and not a lot of people would like getting into that. And I thought I was the smart guy who was going to be there's nobody in the city, not many people in the city that are doing classic cars. So I'll be Urban Classics. I'll take all the classic cars and fix them. And that was my whole business model. I was fix classic cars. And then I realized after getting about $250,000 in debt, why there was no classic car business in New York City, because you can't. It's just the real estate's too expensive here. You can't, have these vehicles sitting. I got this car sitting here for 6 months waiting for a $12 seal to put in. It made no sense. And thankfully, people had classic cars, had modern day cars, and they brought those too to me. And I slowly moved away from the classic cars into just purely, pretty much daily drivers.
Hmm. Is
So,
there? Oh, go on.
no, I was going to say, but I'm not that, like people ask me, like, oh, what do you drive? Like thinking that I'm like I'm really, like I've got to have a certain kind of car. I do, but I'm more of a utilitarian kind of like I love cars that you get in them, you turn the key, they start, they run, they get you where you got to go, and it's comfortable to sit in. And so like the Audi, the all-wheel drive, I like the all-wheel drive, but I don't. I mean, I do get a bit of a rush out of some of these supercars, and customers bring them, and then I get to drive them and test drive this, hot Mercedes Benz or BMW, and I go, wow, that was a great experience. And here's your bill for $9,000. It's like,
Wow.
glad it's not mine. uh,
What has been like? Has there been like? I mean, I don't even know the language to say. But like, what has been like? Just like the either the coolest or the most unique or like the rarest car that you guys have worked on that like you got to drive, or just where you're like, that's pretty cool.
yeah, I mean, well, back when I was Urban Classics, we did a lot of E-type Jaguars, those long nosed ones, the 12 cylinder. Although very, beautiful car, spectacularly gorgeous car, but what's the most commonly used tool on a Jaguar?
This is a loaded question. No, what is
Yeah,
it?
it's a tow truck. So
Oh,
they break down all the time, and even right out of the gate. In fact, I learned from a guy who was a Jaguar technician very early on, and I mean, I remember when he was working on them brand new, they would go back to the dealer every 2,000 miles. They were terrible, but we back in the day, I worked on It was really amazing. It was a 1957 Pontiac Bonneville convertible, and it was in 1957. It was fuel injected. It used the same fuel injection as the Corvettes, but this car was designed by DeLorean, and there were only like 115 of those cars. And it came to us because they couldn't get the fuel injection to run. And myself and my fuel professor at uh, City Tech, we figured it out, got some original plans, and actually fixed it. But it was a real fun car to be in. In terms of the cars that like you know, I've been in some of the BMW, like the M class, threes and fives are just, they're pretty spectacular. And a couple of classic Porsches I've been in that are special. But I'm really like a lot more into when they don't work and just fixing them. I don't like. I get sometimes I'm embarrassed. People. Oh, have you seen the new this, that, and the other thing? I'll in a couple of years I'll see it.
I'm gonna start breaking
When
down.
it starts to break, then I'll look at it. So I do appreciate a really well built automobile, and when they perform well. And I have to say, like I said, the Audi Sport models are just to me, and the R's and the S, they're a little bit mouthwatering to me.
Mhm.
Um,
Sure. How when I mean I know like I think when I was in the '80s, I guess was like when I got my license, or late '80s, and back then I mean there seemed to be at least a crisis in reputation or perception for like American cars.
yeah.
Has like and that's kind of I guess that's the entire span of like you are owning the shop. Have American cars like gotten a lot better um, from those early days, if that was
Yeah.
even really a problem?
Yeah. Well, there was a period when American cars were really horrible. Just like you couldn't find a good one. And there was a, and then I would say in the mid '90s, like General Motors started to kind of come back with a better product. It's been really challenging for the Americans to put together consistently some great cars. You think some of the real workhorses. It always used to. There's a guy on the show who owned a major Chevrolet, and he always used to uh, moan about how as soon as General Motors found the car like the Caprice, which was like a rock solid thing. They used them as taxi cabs, right? Or the Ford Escape, like the Ford Escape hybrid, like these things that were going hundreds of thousands of miles in New York City streets, and of course they discontinue them. He would always go like, "Why they finally get it down, and then they discontinue it." So yeah, I mean, the American cars have remained, challenging. I think General Motors and Ford have put out some, definitely some better products. The the Ford Explorer at a point was doing much better. They had some bad times in the mid '90s, but disappointing. I mean, they remain disappointing to me. Um, Very frustrating, because uh, it's not like it isn't, you know, it can't be done. I mean, the Japanese do it. I mean, Toyota. I mean, and Toyotas are not perfect, Toyota and Lexus, but they, you drive their cars, and you can drive a well cared for, Lexus that has 250,000 miles on it. It feels like it's brand new.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where are you going to find the Chevy Malibu that can do that or say that?
Mm-hmm.
You can't. Um, so it's very frustrating that we can't seem to put it together,
Yeah.
properly here. And then of course you have I mean, well, Chrysler. What a you know that's not really I mean, that's really not an American company anymore. Anyway, it's right. It's Fiat.
Yeah.
It's owned by an Italian company. Not that the Italians are, any better or worse, but it's just and Chrysler's been bought and sold so many times. It's like it's kind of a ship without a rudder.
Right. Right.
So I'm not, unfortunately, there aren't a lot of great American. I mean, the Ford, Crown Victoria. What a battleship that thing could, was a very strong vehicle. The Caprices, but there aren't a lot of them that are great.
Yeah. I mean, cars in general have probably changed so much since you first got started. I can't imagine how much more complicated. Does it make it that much more difficult to get into your trade because it's a lot more technical, or if
Yeah.
like all the training and education and support services kind of like keep people on track, or is it harder to find mechanics and stuff like that?
Well, I'm really glad you brought this one up because this is it's a big, big issue. Not just for automotive, but in the trades in general. I mean, trade education in the United States is completely broken. It's just we there's no. I guess there's unfortunately not a value placed on the technical training, um, and so we don't really. I mean, there's a huge shortage of qualified automotive technicians in the United States, and it shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, we everybody should go to college. Nobody should, trades are. I mean, if you embrace the new technology um, in automotive, I mean, in very quickly you could be in the six-figure salary range. I know techs that make 150 to $200,000 a year.
Wow, that's like a little like a young lawyer makes.
Yeah, I mean, and but you have to, it's but unfortunately, unless you're in an environment like, let's say, you work for a dealership or something, and the dealership is one that invests in its personnel, in terms of training. Because in dealerships, a lot of times they try to get away the minimum amount of people that are highly trained, but it's very difficult to get training. I work very hard at getting my techs trained in environments. I mean, virtual training has helped a lot, but I went to a seminar on training, uh, both technical training and also management training for people in automotive. And the guy up there mentioned the fact that the F-35 fighter jet, which is like the most sophisticated fighting machine ever built, stealth capabilities and all this kind of stuff, running something like 24 megabytes of code per second to make it possible for this plane to do unbelievable things, right? Shoot somebody between the eyes from 900 miles away and all kinds of stuff. 24 megabytes of code per second. And the technology that's involved to make that jet do all those things. And he said, then the shocker was the 2018 F 150 pickup truck by Ford runs 101 megabytes of code per second.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And so you don't, and where is that? Oh, the blind spot protection, the, pedestrian warning, the this, the that, the lane departure, the radar in the glass, in the mirrors, in the thing that buzzes you when you're getting too close to, I mean, all these things to the climate control, to the the Bluetooth connectivity and all these things. And we ask some guy that, hey, guy comes into my shop and says, I want to learn about cars. You want to learn about cars? Well, I figure if I just watch you guys work for a while, I'll just, that's not the way it works anyway. Back in the day when I started, I could watch and break knuckles with everybody else and learn how to get that ball joint out and all that kind of stuff. But today, you got to be a highly trained. I mean, you can't do an oil change without putting a scan tool on a car and resetting all kinds of monitors. And if you want to change the guy's brakes, you got to electronically retract the brake calipers, and you got to, it's you put a mirror on a car, you've got to recalibrate the whole ADAS system. It's like we're really in trouble when it comes to this in our country, because we're not training people. So uh, I've worked with in the public education realm and also on the college level, and it's like the challenge is, it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel. There's some of the best techs I get are not from the United States, because they grew up, whether it's Latin America or Asia or Europe. You went to school, middle school. I like cars. I want to learn about them, and you actually, when you graduate high school, it's kind of like it's like almost like an IB, right? You get you have 2 years of, like, you do technical training with academics, and then 2 more years where you're still doing technical training, but you're also working in dealerships and apprenticeships. And so when you graduate with this, with your certificate, you're trained, you've got work experience, you've been trained in a coherent way, in a systematic way, and you know how to approach automotive technology from a well-informed standpoint. Here it's like, people have to fight to, if you want it, the information, unless you're in an environment like some of the manufacturers have some great programs. Mercedes-Benz does, BMW has a STEPS program. Toyota has some programs where they're doing working in partnership with the public schools, but there's no real coherent approach to technical education that's consistent. And so the result is, um, well, you get a lot of bad work.
Yeah. Well, it almost seems like I mean, like for me growing up, at least, it was like the education system was that at least that I got caught up in, and the vibe that I was getting was like it's gearing you all towards college and whatever, and then the default was just everything else, and there didn't seem to be kind of any like structured pipelines that would kind of empower people that were going on that other way. It was kind of
Right.
like, and I think that's you know I don't. I mean, I think to me, like part of like I guess why I'm doing this podcast even is just the idea of like kind of realizing like how everybody has a valuable part to contribute to society and to what we're all doing. Like
Yeah,
the truck drivers, the car mechanics. Like you
absolutely.
became a life ring to a lot of
Yeah.
people during the pandemic, and that was your community service in some respects.
Yeah. I think uh, I remember, like, we all had back in the day, at least for me, I don't know if it was you're younger than me, but like, shop class,
Yeah, yeah,
printing, woodworking, metalworking, automotive. Um, and I thought it was, now you look back on it, they've cut most of that out, a lot to save money, but they take away a valuable experience in terms of, well, there's a lot of critical thinking that gets built into those kind of classes that where you apply what you've learned in other areas, but also you get exposed to like, oh, this is a possible career. Well, um, I think what happened was because of what used to be known as tracking. You know about tracking? So,
I mean, not
well,
familiar with the term, but
when
not
I
really.
was younger, a kid, there was tracking where, and a lot of it was based on race and class. I mean, it was just understood. You know, the poor kids, white or non-white, they weren't on the college path. They were in the vocational. It was like that was like the low life. Yeah. Oh, you're not going to college. You're going to vocation. Oh, he goes to vocational school. So, and that was not right. There were a lot of people that were uh, not middle class, not from wealthy families that deserve to go to college, that have the aptitude to go to college, and whether it was a race or class, and there were serious race issues, that you know prohibited. Basically, the system prohibited you from breaking the the track. They called it tracking, and so to break the track, there was a um, kind of an opposite swing of the pendulum, which said like every kid should go to college. Every kid should have the opportunity to go to college, and and I don't think that was the intention. I think that people were looking for equity, which I fully support, but we kind of shot ourselves in the foot because you know just going to college, the guy, oh, I got my degree in English literature, whoopee,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
meanwhile the guy who went through the plumbing apprenticeship is making like four times that guy's money. The guy with the English literature degree, can't find a job.
yeah.
Um, you see that kind of nowadays. But anyway, there was a lot of dignity and status uh, taken away from the vocational trades, and people are saying like everybody wants that shot for college, and everybody should have that shot for college. And public education, I think, made a mistake. I don't think that there was anything wrong with making everybody should have an equal shot for that, but there is a lot of dignity and a lot of financial stability found in the trades.
Right.
Um,
And I think to me, what like one of these I've realized, and late in life too, unfortunately, is like there are some people who like the intellectual rigor of whatever doing, but there's a lot of people who like working with their hands, and they like you had said, you like the satisfaction of fixing things, and not everybody is meant to be a college professor, not everybody's meant to be an accountant or a lawyer or
right,
an investment banker or a
right,
teacher. Some of them
yeah,
want to get their hands dirty or just want to fix things and work with tangible things.
yeah, and God bless those people.
Yeah.
That I mean, how do we live?
Yeah.
We live because of all these people that do know how to build things and fix things and keep them running, and whether it's the sanitation worker or the this or the that
Yeah.
or the automotive technician. I mean, during the pandemic, we were considered essential workers. And why? Because how would the nurses and the doctors and the police officers and the firefighters get to their jobs
Yeah. Yeah.
if they didn't have the cars? I mean, it's so important. Everybody, there's so it's really a shame that we have that we lost that focus on the dignity of the trades and the importance of them. Um, and hopefully, I it's one thing, like when I retire from this business, I would like to get involved with trade education and trying to figure out a, a more coherent uh, policy, because we really need it. And there are examples all over the world. I mean,
Yeah.
that
Germany
it's
is
just
usually
been
cited, right?
Germany and France, and I mean, geez, I have a guy working for me from Senegal, worked for Peugeot Renault. I mean, highly trained. Just you go to school, they train you. There's absolute dignity in it, and he makes a good living, um, and it's a norm. Here, it's you know on the fringes. There are people though that know. I mean, and there are technicians out there that let me tell you something. It's a great trade to go into if you embrace the challenge.
Hmm. Wow.
It absolutely is.
Well, there, I would. We could talk for hours, and I could actually learn something probably from you, so I could do something more than just change like the windshield wiper fluid in my car. But then you'd lose business. We should probably wrap up because I'm sure you have like lots of you probably have a backlog there at the shop. Um, but I love to like finish these discussions just with like a basic question about like like what gives you hope at the end of the day.
um, that's an excellent question, and I got to tell you, uh, human beings. Uh, I'm there's a lot in New York City. There's a lot of you could see a lot of bad things in people, but if you choose to, you can see people as we're quite remarkable all over the place. There are amazing um, displays of real decency and humanity that all around us. And we've all gone through some really tough times the last couple of years, especially. We're not in Ukraine. That's something to be thankful for. I mean, not that bad, right? But we've this country and this city, we've gone through some really tough stuff. But I really remain hopeful. My hope is in people. My shop. I had this big meeting today. I mean, it's been really hard on us, really brutally hard on us. We had people that lost loved ones, and we had working conditions have been very difficult, and a lot of stress and all that stuff. And we kind of hit this, and I was talking today with everybody about how, like, last week we had this amazing week where everything kind of came together, and it happened because of what each one of us did. And people can do amazing things. So that's my hope, is in it's just, and faith is in people to do the right thing. It's easy to just become completely cynical, right, about people like that and rotten people, huh? But people are also, there are rotten people out there, but there are also there are many more good people in the world than there are bad people. And I love that, and I see them every day and speak with them every day, and it's what gives me hope to. It's why I wake up in the morning. So that's my what gives me hope are people and the goodness that they show.
Well, thank you. That's a perfect way to end this. Well, David,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me for this and sharing a little bit about your
Yeah.
world. And I wish you the best of luck. I hope I don't see you very often. but
Come on, you
but
can
when I do,
stop.
I look forward to seeing you.
I always tell people you can just stop by to say hello.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.